creators. Last week, we heard from Nikki, and now it's time for part two. Because when we heard from Nikki last week, it turned out to be exactly what needed to happen. After we helped Nikki investigate her worth, we had to question something even deeper. We had to ask, who exactly is the one creating the story about your worth in the first place? And to do it, we followed the Odyssey, not as an ancient myth, but as a mirror, a journey through the mind itself. We explored how generations of conditioning taught us to master the outer world, but rarely teaching us to observe the inner one. And so many of us have been conditioned to treat our conditioning as if it is who we are. That's why tonight we return to Nikki. Just for the new viewers, I want you to know that Nikki is important for this conversation. Nikki is a young woman questioning her worth after a failed job experiment. Nikki went in believing she had landed a job, even had her first day, but never got the second day. And little by little, a missing start date became the moment where she started questioning her value little by little. That's why tonight we return to a deeper question. And that question is, what happens when you're aware of awareness itself? Because if awareness can recognize itself, if awareness can honor itself, if awareness can appraise its own value, then maybe your worth was never waiting on a phone call in the first place. I want to return to our conversation with Nikki. I want to just show it one more time. Because Nikki is, of course, here as our mirror, and she is a meeting point between the history of the world, which we covered last week, our own sense of self-worth and value, that conversation around knowing oneself and seeing oneself clearly, and our research question for the evening, which is what happens when you're aware of awareness itself. Keep it locked, because tonight we finish the journey we started last week. That's why if you're ready to live fear, oh shit, this shit is live. If you're ready to live free beyond fear, welcome here. I'm Dr. Shawn, and I believe you do not need years to heal. You just need one real breakthrough. That's why I invented Transcendent Psychology, and I tested in the real world on real people on my game show, Countdown to Breakthrough, the only game show that heals your soul. Right now, you're on the Breakthrough Live, where we break down the science of healing so that you get your own breakthrough live. On today's show, folks, man, listen. Where do we even start? Last week was one of the coldest lectures that I've ever freestyled before. If you have not seen part one of this show, drop everything and go watch that, because that joint is, I left that conversation feeling like, okay, we now have the groundwork. We understand the stakes. We understand what happens when we don't do this the right way. When we build our societies, we call them civilizations, but we end up only building anti-civilizations, civilizations that are built on the backs of actually confining, constraining, and taking away other people's right to follow God, right to follow nature, if you like that term, right to express themselves fully. We're basically enslaving people in order to enjoy ourselves, right? It was a heavy conversation. Yes, it was. But it was also an important conversation. Tonight, we actually need to get into the laboratory. We actually need to understand, yes, what the problem is, but now begin to dive into the actual solution. What does it actually mean to see oneself clearly? We know that right now there is an epidemic. I was literally telling y'all last week, I was telling y'all the historical legacy of Morocco, the northern African country, and or what is today the northern African country, and Spain. And I was just saying this last week. And then in the news this week, there's been some activity, right? You know what I'm saying? Like it's like the activity being, of course, they said something like 60,000 migrants uh, flooding into this Spanish-controlled territory in North Africa called Ceuta. And so it's kind of like this is only the like we just covered this last week. I was just giving y'all the framework. When we talk about karma, we're talking always about consequences and habits. We're talking about the habits, your habits, and we're talking about the consequences of those habits. That's all karma means. And so human beings, we seem to have to, until we are ready to actually look at ourselves, we're not really paying attention deeply to our own habits. And so that started sticking with me this past week. I promise we're going to get to Nikki in just a moment, but I want to make sure I'm setting up this show because last week was unlike anything that's ever happened on this show before. And this week is already different too. And so, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know where tonight leads. I just know that by taking the time to turn our focus away from external action and reaction and onto a central locus of control, we might discover something new. Of course, that's a conversation that awaits in our conscious transformation laboratory for the evening. And by the way, before we even jump into Nikki, Twin, I see you in the room. Good evening, Dr. Shawn. Good evening, Twin. Other Twin, I see you in the room. Good evening, Dr. Shawn, and a great, wonderful hello to all that takes this breakthrough for real. May you realize and receive or reciprocate this true breakthrough feeling as citizens of the earth. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Welcome in, Twin. Felicity, my love, is in the room. Welcome in. Okay, folks, it is that time. Let's hit and get to our conversation with Nikki. Just to recap that, and then we'll proceed into our laboratory experiment for the evening.
Nikki, I got you, Nikki. Okay. Are you cool?
Yeah, we good.
Okay, I'm here with Nikki right now. All right, and what we're doing is an episode of Countdown to Breakthrough. Nikki is just about to tell us something that happened at a coffee shop. Let's dig in.
Okay, so I got somewhat hired at a coffee shop. I've been reaching out to this coffee shop because I want a job that's not demanding and really local.
Sure.
So, and it's mainly for networking because I am home all the time right now. So I'm like, okay, let me just get this job so I have something to do.
Yes.
I got hired, but they didn't put me on the books. Like, they didn't get, like, my name or my social or anything, which was kind of weird. And then I went to training, And, you know, they wanted me to stay like a full shift.
Okay.
Wait, they didn't inform me. So it was from, they just said come at 12:30. And then when I got there, you know, they kind of just throw me to the wolves, which I could do. It's not rocket science.
Okay.
And then, you know, I asked what time I'm leaving. They're like 7. I'm like, nah, I'm not staying till 7. I'm not working a full shift.
Okay.
So we I end up leaving at like 3:30 or something, 4 like that. And I'm reaching out to get my schedule to figure out what's the next step. So nobody reached out to me. I reached out to the owner and the manager. They kind of like, they just ghosted me. So yesterday I called twice, or the day before I called twice. But yesterday I sent a voicemail. I said, hey, you know, I reached out to you guys 6 times. It's obviously you decided not to reach out, like move forward with me. But I feel like it was very unprofessional to not communicate with me. And I'm not really interested in obtaining a job anymore. But I don't care if it's $10. I want my money for those hours.
Okay. So what they say?
So he ends up not calling me till like 9:30 last night, which is also, again, my whole point of the voicemail was like, you're unprofessional, and then calling me at 9:30 last night. I didn't answer.
Did he leave a voicemail?
No, he didn't.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say that basically if they brought you in, they wanted to throw you to the wolves, it almost seemed like a setup. Almost as if they didn't intend to give you the role in the first place. Is that kind of what you were feeling?
Maybe. Yeah, possibly.
Okay, so that, to me, that suggests it's very common. If it was me, I would think that would be a value deal, right? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like be professional, at least value me enough to be professional with the no,
Yeah.
or value me enough to be professional with the yes.
Correct.
Okay, so that's kind of what the little perturbance was about.
Yeah, that, and it's like, not that, you know, a coffee job. I've worked in corporate, like,
Yeah.
I've had better jobs.
Of course.
Clearly, if you look at my resume, this is obviously out of my norm, and I just want to do it. So it's not like you can count that I'm capable of doing it.
Right. So you're saying not only are you valuable, clearly your record shows
Yeah.
that you are valuable.
Correct.
Y'all knew that when you brought me in.
Correct.
Okay. And so I'm about to punch this clock. Because if I'm correct here, then it seems that this is really just about a dig about value. It's a dig about wanting to feel that respect, wanting to feel like, let me ask you one question. What was the kind of the worst moment? The worst moment out of that entire ordeal?
Process? For me, I just don't like being ignored. So maybe like not responding to my calls or my text message. I don't like that.
Okay.
Like,
and do you remember what that felt like to be ignored?
I don't know. I just know I don't like feeling ignored. I don't know if I know what it felt like. I don't think if I can identify the emotion like clearly.
No, let's go back. So I'm about to hit the punch. I'm about to punch the clock. We're about to get our 7 minutes right now, just so the YouTube can see. All right. So y'all moving. We moving. Here we go. Okay. So right now with me, you can keep your eyes open or you can close them. I like to close mine.
Okay.
Because I go there. But if we can go together back to that place where you first felt ignored, just go back to that mental scene. Don't worry, we're going to handle it in a moment, but just go back and feel those emotions of waiting for the email to come through, but it never does. Checking the phone, but the call didn't come through. In fact, it's just your mom calling. You'll call her back later. You know what I'm saying? Like, go back to that mental scene. See the room that you were in. See the furniture, the television, the nightstand, the coffee table, the books, the smells, and just waiting for that call to come through, waiting for that email to come through. And most importantly, go to that feeling of being ignored. It kind of sits in the torso somewhere. And just kind of just feel that, just for a moment. And what we're going to do is right now, tell me that you're back in that room and you can feel that feeling. Just say yes? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And so right now, imagine that there is a dial, like a thermostat. If you turn this thermostat all the way to the right, every single thing in that room begins to levitate. I'm talking about the furniture begins to levitate. The phone that was in your hand begins to levitate. The television begins to levitate. The picture frames begin to levitate. And even that emotion, that feeling of being ignored, begins to levitate right outside of your body. Everything is hanging over just above your head. Right now, for me, turn that dial to the right now, and watch everything lift off the ground, weightless like balloons. Every single thing is now weightless to your touch. The phone, you can tap it and it goes gently across the room. The furniture, the couches, so heavy, now light, you can tap them and they go gently across the room. Every single thing in this memory is floating. Even the email that you wanted, you could even imagine your phone and all the words, all the emails that you possibly got in this last week, all of those go flying right up into the air. Everything is weightless. And lastly, you notice that feeling of being ignored, even that has exited your body right out the top of the head, and it too is weightless, floating away from you. And you can tap it and watch it float just across the room. Right now, what does it feel like that everything in this inner environment is light and airy to the touch?
It feels freeing.
And is that freedom something that you had to purchase? Did you have to buy it somewhere?
No.
So that freedom is inside of you. And so right now, if you'll open your eyes with me, and we'll ask just a couple questions, which is, right now, with everything floating, what does it feel like inside of your own body right now?
I feel light.
Yes, okay, you feel light. Where do you feel the lightness?
My shoulders.
Ooh, okay, so burden released. Okay, so you have this lightness. You didn't buy it from anywhere, which means it can only come from where?
Within.
Right. And so this lightness that is, what I would say, this lightness is you. It's just your true self. And so anything else that you add on to that, that's extra.
Yeah.
But when you want to get back to just you get back to that lightness.
Okay.
And there's that freedom. Let me ask you one more question, which is, what happens to that memory's ability to affect you negatively if you're using this technique, if you're making everything float?
Doesn't really have any leverage or power.
Absolutely. So no leverage, no power. Would you say something like this is helpful to you?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. And you can do this anytime any negative situation or any situation you call negative happens.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's see if I did this in... I got it in 4 minutes. I think, yeah. Okay, 4 minutes, 48 seconds. All right, y'all cool? All right. Here we go. Okay, so that's the point. That's the point of what we do, and that's the point of just having that lightness and being able to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Because that lightness can speak to you.
Yeah.
And whether you say it's God or universal consciousness or whatever, or just your true self, however you want to call it, it'll speak to you. And so maybe it's not that coffee shop, that job that you need. Maybe it's something even better.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something much better.
Yeah.
And so it's like listening for that lightness. It'll tell you, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
You just go over there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, Nikki, thank you so much for stopping.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for stopping me.
Yes, yes.
Nikki, thank you so much for coming on the show. Folks, this conversation got started for me 22 years ago. This conversation about seeing oneself clearly. When we talk about awareness, again, just to recap, the idea is that awareness, our own consciousness, there is no self without it. There is no person without it. If you were not aware, you would not be. You dig what I'm saying? Like, you would not know yourself. You could not know the world. You would not know that there was a such thing as a self. You dig what I'm saying? So we say, okay, that which is, if I take apart from me, the me disappears, must actually be the true self, right? Someone can hit you over the head and you can forget the story of your life. You can forget where you were born. You can forget your parents' face. You can forget all. That stuff is That's more like story. Those are more like ideas believed in. But the awareness that knows the ideas, we say, okay, that is actually the true self. And in fact, that's why the mystics in the Advaita tradition, in the Hindu tradition, these folks called God the self, right? Because everything is known by awareness. And what they discovered is that everything is actually produced by awareness. And that's really important. I'll say it's what they knew. And so this journey for me started 22 years ago. Dude, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I was listening to Lil Flip, uh Sunshine. You remember that joint that came out like 2004? Uh I can call you my baby girl. Maybe we can spend some time. You can be my sunshine. You know that song? You know that song like Lil Flip was hot in '04, boy. '04? Like I remember getting off the school bus, you know what I'm saying, and like, trying to sell. I mean, we were just people walking around in jerseys that were too long and Air Forces and shorts that were so long they might as well have been pants. The clothes were oversized. I mean, it was 2004. You feel me? And so it was like I think I would have been that would have been my first year of high school. So you know what I'm saying? You're trying to fit in, you're trying to do all this stuff. I had switched, my parents got divorced when I was 2. And so I was switching custody to live with my mom. I'm sorry, to go live with my dad instead of my mom. And so we moved into this neighborhood that was, upper middle class, and there wasn't anyone that was really, I mean, it was in the middle of nowhere in Ohio. You know what I'm saying? So it was a certain demographic that was out there, and so we looked really out of place wearing these long, tall jerseys with the headbands and the, you know what I'm saying, trying to rock the cornrow. It just looking like Allen Iverson for real. I remember being so depressed. 2004, like 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, that 13 to 14, 12 to 15, 12 to 16, 17, those were the worst years of my life in the sense that I mean, I done lost people. I done like, done ran through all kinds of successes and financial calamities and all kinds of things have happened since 2004. But I can tell you, 2004 was like the worst. So this song comes on, that little flip joint I was just telling you about, and it was like, it was just playing just about an hour and a half ago, and it was bringing me back to that time when in my mind there was like no escaping these doubtful thoughts about self-worth, the very thing that we were just talking with Nikki about. That feeling of like, oh man, I feel like I'm being ignored. Like I was in a school with all people who refer to themselves as white, right? And so in that school, it was like the being ignored was like that became the norm. It was like that was the normal, procession of things. And so, but it didn't stop just at school, also at home. People were too busy working all of the time to kind of, check in and pay attention. And in those days, no one was thinking about like mental health like that. That wasn't really a slogan. So I just remember going through and being that young kid who was, I mean, I'm just mad depressed. We didn't have a name for it, so there was no medication for it. And if you can imagine, I mean, you don't have to imagine for real, but like I know what it's like to go through life not believing in myself, not really knowing if there was going to be anyone who ever would believe in what I could be or what I could do or any of the things that these deeper possibilities like. And I remember like yeah, man, just not wanting to get out of bed, just being sapped of energy, not wanting to see, these enter into these environments where no matter what I did, it felt like I was always just kind of off to the side, ignored. So when Nikki was talking to us tonight, like, you know what I'm saying? That's like a mirror. I'm like, oh, wait, I remember that. I remember that feeling. I remember one time telling my cousin, I was like, you know what? I want to go on a quest for enlightenment. It was around that time, 2004. And he started laughing immediately. You know what I'm saying? Like, "What are we talking about?" And I didn't know what I was talking about, but I just said, I need to go on this quest for enlightenment. I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't know anything about any Eastern philosophy, nothing. So the idea of enlightenment, I don't know why I said it. I don't know why I said it. I hadn't been introduced to Buddhism yet. I hadn't been introduced to Taoism yet. I hadn't been introduced to the Eastern arts. I hadn't been introduced to even the Western French Enlightenment. I wouldn't know what that, you know what I'm saying? 14, 13. I don't know why I said that, but I was like, I want to go on the quest for enlightenment. And in those days, you know what I'm saying? Like, cousin, like once people find out that you have some sort of, emotional vulnerability, psychological vulnerability, I had the kind of family that, you know what I'm saying? The kind of people in my life who would be like, oh, yeah, okay, let me poke at that. You know what I'm saying? So my cousin sent me a book that was written by a person with autism. That it was like, I hate being inside of me is what the title of the book was called. And, it wasn't meant to be funny. It was just meant to, you know what I'm saying? Like when what I'm saying is that when you're in an ecosystem where suffering is the norm, then if somebody can suffer a little more, then you know what I'm saying, people can start to feel good about that. And so we covered where that originates historically last week. Oh, watch part 1 if you've not. But I remember that feeling, dude, and I remember like just not wanting to live anymore. You dig? I remember going into my dad's closet and picking out like this. It was like he had a pistol. He had a pistol. So I was like trying to load it up and, do the thing. I was like, I got to get out of here because that feeling of just like being ignored. And then also you got the kids, doing like making fun of you and doing all this stuff. It made for a cocktail of nonsense. And so I was holding this pistol in my hand because the safe that day he used to keep it in the safe, but the safe that day just was unlocked. And so I like had this pistol in my hand. And then I could feel like this white light in my chest going off. And it was like, basically, it was just like, no. It was basically like, just no, don't do that. And it's just a white, I mean, that's the best way I can explain it. Just a white light kind of going off. And it was just like, nope. And so the challenge of being a young person in the world when you're not equipped with KITS, of course, stands for Conscious Transformation Technologies. These are the tools that we use in Transcendent Psychology so that we can take responsibility for our mind and emotions at all times. But I didn't have those at that time. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have that. I just, and no one I knew had that. I didn't know that a thing like that could exist. There was no The best thing that we had was, prayer, and people didn't know what that was. And so, it was basically just asking God to do something. And then when it didn't happen right away, you thought it wasn't going to happen. You know what I'm saying? And it just ends up being it ends up being what life is for most people. So when we're working with Nikki or anyone else, I'm always coming to it like, yeah, I might have caught you on a good day. I might have caught you on a day when you were feeling kind of good and, you know what I'm saying, kind of smooth and all that. But I know what those darkest moments look like. And don't you know, it wouldn't be until following that, I should say, I got deep, 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 deep into the church. And so, you know what I'm saying, I became like one of them Jesus freaks because I just needed something. I needed some version of wisdom. I needed something. And that was the only thing that was available with it. And even then it was, a little bit. And after a point, like the stuff just stopped making sense. Like I remember walking out of the church one day. Felicity was with me. We were at Bowling Green State University. I walked out of the church one day because I'm like, yo, like there's this pain that's still in me, and something about the stories that were being told inside of this church is not it's not penetrating. It's not penetrating. It's almost as if we're not really getting to the true heart of what God's word is. That was the feeling. I was like, it's almost like we're not. I was like, let me get up out of here right quick. I walked out of the church and just started walking around the neighborhood that the church was in, and that might have been the last time I ever went to a church. That was probably it. Fortunately, 2011 comes through. I'm going off to grad school, and on my first day, we had this thing called teacher assistant training. In order to get your scholarship, you had to be what's called a TA, a teaching assistant, which is basically, the person who grades the papers when the professor is too busy. And so I was at the TA training, and this man walks in, this old man, white beard, and he tells me, he's telling the entire auditorium, he's saying, listen, if you want to get in the classroom and you want to teach, you truly want to teach, leave your ego at the door. Something as simple as that. Something as simple as that statement at that time, when I was 21, 22, at that time, that was like, yo, he's talking about ego in a way that Sigmund Freud never did. He's talking about ego in a way that the psychoanalyst didn't. Yo, what does he know? Because at this time I started doing like I started getting influenced. I started seeing just a little bit of what the Eastern mystics were talking about because I was in judo. Judo is a martial art, which means the gentle way, or you could say, the gentle way of nature. And these people had a much more profound idea of what nature was. To them, nature, God, the same thing. How we in the West would think about God, that's how they would think about nature, right? The author of all things, the thing that's responsible for creating everything. You dig what I'm saying? So they called judo the gentle way of nature because you're helping your opponent find the ground. You're helping your opponent find their off balance. You're helping your opponent find their way to the floor. You dig what I'm saying? It's a throwing art. It's a grappling art. So when he said leave your ego at the door, I was like, yo, that's just like in judo. They said the same, and it's the same thing. Leave your ego at the door. I was like, what do you know? What does this old man know? So I sit back and I'm waiting because I know that if I don't answer these questions, like when's the next time that I'm going to be reaching for a gun trying to get out of the pain that I'm feeling internally? or worse, try and turn to some numbing substance, or worse, you know what I'm saying? Like put other people onto, join a culture where everybody's jumped up in these numbing substances called drugs. You feel me? Like, and then you getting caught up, hemmed up. Now you institutionalized. Now you know what I'm saying? I mean, all the ways that things can spin out of control, looking for an escape valve from something that is internal. I said, damn it, I gotta know. What does this man know that could potentially free me? Because if I run into the church, I find another trap. They'll say good things 20% of the time, but 80% of the time it turns into something totally different. Something that doesn't quite touch my soul. I was like, this don't work. This don't work. And I'm not about to join another. I'm not about to go and try and be a different kind of religion. I saw the one didn't work. Why am I going to try another? Like, I'm cool. Let me just know the truth. So I catch this old man. I find him after he's walking out of the auditorium. I go wait. This is Northern Illinois University. I go wait in the like the tower. What they call that joint? Like the ombudsman in the tower. Like if you look up NIU, you'll see a tower. I was up in there. It's like a clock tower type joint. Man, because they could have tore it down. But anyway, the point is that like, so I'm waiting for Buddy after he gets done with this speech at this teaching assistant convention. I'm just waiting for him because I want to ask him about this understanding of ego, and I want to know if he has ever heard of the gentle way of nature, and if he could point me to some reading, to some books that would tell me more about what it means to perceive reality clearly, to go to the source of existence directly. I wanted to see if he could point me in the direction that no pastor, no parent, no school teacher, no friend, that nobody ever could before. I wanted to see if he could do it. And I didn't need much. I just needed a book, just one book, just one book. Give me one book. I love to read. I love to read. Give me one book. Give me one book. So I'm waiting for Buddy outside and he never comes. And just when I'm like sitting there waiting 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I think I'm probably missing some. I think it was at the end of the day, so I was cool. All I had to do was go back home. So we were already there for like 8 hours, whatever. So I was like, well, maybe he's got to walk through this atrium. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I can. I'll just kind of look and I'll just kind of creep until I see him. He doesn't come. As I'm getting up to leave, and I'm thinking, okay, I'll come back next week, or hopefully I can see him again. I don't know. He was just a guest speaker, maybe. I don't know. I see this man walking straight through that atrium. As I'm getting up to leave, I see this man walking straight through that atrium, and he walked his back straight, head upright. Not quite feminine, but not performatively masculine. When that little flip song used to come on, you know what I'm saying? That in 2004, I would actually change my walk to try and walk through the hallways at school so that people would think I was whore. You know what I'm saying? I would try, boy, like I'm trying to dance through the hallway. Dude, those insecurities were completely wiped away from this man in his gait, in his very walk. I was like, okay, I can see that this cat is an old man, of course, but I was like, he's worked through the problems that I haven't even started trying to work through yet. He's worked through them. I can see it in his body. He's not carrying the same kind of internal conflict, turmoil. He's not carrying this weight. He's not grabbing guns trying to think about, okay, is this going to be the moment to take himself out? He's not thinking like that. I can see it. I can see it. I can sense that, okay, this dude has figured something out. And the big Merlin beard didn't help. You know what I'm saying? Like he has like this super Merlin beard, right? So I said, hey, look, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. Sir, would you you mentioned something tonight in tonight's lecture about the ego, and it sounded real different than how Freud talks about the ego. I think it's fascinating. Do you have any books on that you found interesting over the years? It was something like that. He was like, he looks at me for a moment, and he says, "Come to my office on Tuesday. I'll be waiting for you." He walks right on through the atrium, straight back, and I was like, "Oh my God, what just happened?" To this day, one of the most important moments of my life, because that man would become the one that I write about in the book, the one that I always talk about, the Taoist mystic, the teacher. The only reason I call him the teacher is because one, he was my teacher, and two, the teacher I trained with for 10 years, but two, he also told me not to, be saying his name on these internet streets. And you know what I'm saying? So I was like, all right, you know what I'm saying? Okay, well, damn. So I was like, okay, well, I'll call you this. Does that work? Does that work for you? He was like, In those moments, when I go to that, and I think I've told you some of those stories before, and I have many more. But over the next 10 years, this man would become this great teacher to me who would show me the supreme art of letting go, show me how to create that sense that felt real experience of lightness at will in the mind, and that this lightness, if we are to pay attention to it, it can actually speak to us. In other words, we are connecting back with supreme reality and allowing it to move through us. Our conversations were necessarily about attention, necessarily about awareness. It's where my first meditation laboratory was built. The reason we even do a conscious transformation laboratory on this show is because it's just an extension of that experience that I had got with the teacher in 2011, which now I recognize is like 15, almost 16 years ago. But in recovering that locus of control, to turn the attention from a chaotic external world and return it inward, that we can gauge and observe our own reactions, our own habits. Once I can understand the habits that my mind moves through anytime it interfaces with the world, then I can understand the consequences of those habits that must occur if those habits remain in position. Right? If my mind is habituated to experience the world in a certain way, there will be a certain result. And so if I'm constantly blaming somebody else, if I'm constantly looking at the next man or blaming a system or doing any of the things, instead of turning within, then I can never take responsibility over my own habits, which means I can never take responsibility over my own consequences, which means I can never take responsibility over my own life. You dig what I'm saying? That's why the book Spiritual Responsibility, that's why I had to write that thing. And the teacher also helped me, he was the editor on that joint. I think I thank him in the back of the book. But those lessons that we were building and putting together, those were so critical. Those were so critical because after some years of training with the teacher, I was like, oh, wait, I can now understand why those people they were the people that I had grown up around in Powell, Ohio. Okay. Central Ohio. These folks, everyone was just acting out of unexamined habits. Everyone was just behaving how someone else laid down for them. You dig what I'm saying? Like there. It's almost as if you really can't blame anyone in that environment because people were just doing the best that they knew how to do. And so, because of the teacher, I got to see that experience. I got to sense that. But more than that, I got to begin the process of turning attention back onto awareness itself, of turning attention back onto that very self that experiences all things in the first place. And over these past few weeks on the Breakthrough Live, we've been diving into awareness. This week will be no exception. Because what I'm saying tonight is that there's a moment for everybody where maybe the issue is not feeling ignored or the issue is not failing to get some job, as was Nikki's case, but there's something, always something. Just yesterday, I get off the phone. The teacher, he sends me a quote every single day. Just a quote from a Taoist tradition or a Buddhist tradition, just something that's like a kind of a cool reminder, a little hip reminder about don't sweat the small stuff and it's all small stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like it like that type of joint. And so it's like it's cute. And it's a way that we kind of just stay inside. You know, it's just cute. Every day he sends me something. But then sometime last week, after years of sending these quotes or sometimes it'll be like little, you know, essays. Yeah, I didn't hear from him. Now he's getting old, so I'm like, what's going on? So, 2 days passed, 3 days passed, 4 days passed. I sent an email and I'm like, hey man, I stopped getting the quotes. Can you make sure you send those? How you doing by the way? You know what I'm saying? Like how's everything? I'm like, let me check in real quick and see if everything's on the up and up. And I don't hear anything back for probably a week. Or I guess it would have been, a few days. They stay out in Michigan, so I was like, okay, well, let me hit this man up and find out what's going on. And I'm thinking that when I call, I'm just prepared for, the news I don't want. So I call, leave a message, and uh, then he emails me right back and says, hey, look, I've been in the hospital for 9 days. Let's talk soon. So I say, cool. It was just yesterday that it was just yesterday that, we had that phone call. I call him up. I said, you got some explaining to do. And naturally, he's got, he says, look, you have some time for me to tell you my story? Yeah. Because he's dying and he knows that, and he still recognizes that the pain that is created from hearing the news about his own stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He knows even in dying that, and his body decaying, falling apart as they hook him up on medications that are numbing at best. He knows that it is all just a story. That was like a part of the training. It's not a story that that a body is decaying or that a person is dying in a sense of, oh well, if we just stop telling the story, then that stops the cancer from killing the person. Like that's not what we mean when we say story. That's not what we mean. But I just got off the phone just yesterday. And then this question of self-worth came up. This question of value, of worthiness. I may have been his only student to take what he was saying seriously. And so as I was experiencing all the emotions as I'm re-experiencing right now, I was just telling him like, they've given him 6 months, which is cool in the sense that, 6 months, which is different, I lost my dad in a day, in an hour. I mean, it was, so 6 months, it's like, okay, that's kind of cool. That's sure we can work with that. But I'm trying to hold it together for him, and I'm breaking down the phone yesterday. I was kind of like, you lived a life that was worthy. He didn't ask me to say that. It was just something that I had to say. That whereas I wish, I said, whereas I wish a million people could be celebrating your life with me. What if it's just us? Then you have to know that your life was well lived. We simply didn't have anybody who could show us these tools, who could be this example. And so when I found that example, I was just looking for a reading list. I was just looking for some books. But what I was given was something that was far more eternal. And maybe that's why tonight is so important. And taking these moments to turn attention back onto the one that is aware. I do not have tears because a man is dying, but because as a result of our conversation yesterday, I take full inventory of every teaching this man has given. And it's like, there's so much cause for celebration, but also there's the meaning. I just understand the meaning. I know what I was before and how transformative this can be. Not in the sense that this man did the work for me, but in the sense that he showed me what the work was in the first place. We didn't even know there was work. You know what I'm saying? We didn't know that the fact that the man showed me what the work was in the first place. The option to do it is ours, but this is what it looks like. Okay. Okay. And that's why we get to it in the lab on the Breakthrough Live because this is the work. And it's not done in a single day. It's ongoing, of course, but the fact that we know to do it. And when I say work, I just mean returning to oneself in a world that has so many distractions, so many opportunities to miss the truth. But one of the biggest things that I learned was that we come back to the same question over and over and over and over again. If we only had one question ever to answer on this show, what happens when awareness is aware of itself? What happens when I'm aware of awareness itself? That would be enough. That itself would be enough because we ask the same question, that same question, we get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper answers to the point where the answer that we got 2 years ago, we're getting a deeper version of that answer today. And so would be the case in 2 years from now. You dig what I'm saying? As long as we keep coming back, keep returning over and over and over again, abiding over and over and over again. With the teacher, I discovered what reality is, or at least as much as I could receive. And of course, that's where we started doing the astral projecting and I mean, all the stuff, all the stuff, all the stuff. And I'm not concerned about the dissolution of a physical body, just that the fact that the body is dissolving in this way, it provides the opportunity to really take inventory and be grateful for all that this man has shown and meant to me. You dig what I'm saying? And so going from being that young kid who had a pistol in his hand, contemplating leaving this physical experience to meeting the teacher and understanding that if we are to live life fully, then we must take responsibility for our psycho-spiritual habits, because those habits each have consequences, and we can engender the sorts of positive habits that lead to fullness and love, or we can allow these habits formed and mutated by past programming to continue to operate unattended to. The only way that we get a choice is if we take the attention that we were previously giving to the world, to the problems, to the people, the situation, the circumstances, the events, and instead we turn that back in on the self. Turn it back in on the self. So naturally, as we go into the lab tonight, the question is still the same. What happens when I'm aware of awareness itself? I want to go deeper and deeper into this. What happens when you're aware of awareness itself? I want to go deeper and deeper into this. And you know what? Just for the record, I think I think I'd like to dedicate tonight's lab experiment to the teacher for all you've done. Let's get to it. At this time, take one deep breath in with me. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. If you are seated at the edge of your chair. Hands on your lap, and your back is straight. You can imagine an invisible string coming from the ceiling and attaching into the crown of your head and holding your entire body up weightless. This simple visualization allows you to keep your back straight during this experience so that you can optimize blood flow, airflow, and energy flow. If you were laying down flat on your back, hands to your side, back straight. At this time, you may close your eyes and inhale in with me. Inhale, exhale, inhale in, exhale out. With your eyes closed, at this time, become aware of the darkness behind your eyes. As you are aware of the darkness behind your eyes, see if you can become aware of awareness itself. Can you sense awareness as a force inside of you? Or are you simply aware? Ask yourself the question, am I aware? And see that the answer is always yes. Today is simple. Simply remain aware that you are aware. Notice that awareness is not an object that you can hold in your hands. In fact, your hands, arms, legs, your entire body exist inside of your awareness. For if awareness somehow disappeared at this time, everything else would too for you. Return back to this question, am I aware? See that the answer is yes. Abide in this awareness that is aware of awareness. Whenever a thought appears to you, simply notice the thought. Appearing as a cloud appears in the sky of your awareness. You do not need to chase the thought. Simply return back to being aware of being aware. You can do this by asking yourself the question, am I aware? The fact that you can say yes to the question, am I aware, means that you are aware that you are aware. Rest in this. Any time a thought comes to distract you, simply ask yourself the question, am I aware? And notice what happens within. Notice what happens within when you confirm yes to the question, am I aware? The moment you catch yourself being distracted by a thought, immediately ask, am I aware? As you observe this awareness, see if you can find the edges of awareness itself. See if there's any place in your experience where awareness can't go. What do you sense as you explore awareness itself? See that awareness has no edges, no borders, no boundaries. Awareness simply is. Ask yourself, am I aware? What does the answer feel like now? I aware? Am I aware? Notice that the body, all of its history, all of its stories appear in awareness. Am I aware? Imagine that even if the body were to disappear, this awareness would remain. Am I aware? This is the original state. Am I aware? Am I aware? What is the most valuable part of a dream? The objects in it, or the awareness that knows and makes all dreams possible? Am I aware? Take one deep breath in with me. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Folks, I'm interested in hearing your experience inside the lab tonight. Put it in the chat. For me, oh man, so many things. I start getting this feeling of like once I began to explore awareness and look at the outer boundaries, look for the boundaries within it and could not find any, soon the awareness naturally expands outside of the body and it's like if you could imagine a human being, a person diving deeply into the ocean and then their consciousness expands such that they become the ocean and the human body is but just one of the other organisms inside of the ocean. I had one of those moments where I could sense that the body, its stories, its history, it was just a component of this larger tapestry, but the supreme reality was this greater self, this greater awareness that itself is immovable, itself is untouched, itself is pristine and pure. You understand that was the feeling. It was not in a way to negate the human experience or anything. It was just a general sense of that what we are is beyond the human experience. You dig? That was part one. Part two was I got this sense that there was that question that came up of what is the value of a dream? And as that was coming up out of this body to utter into the microphone, there was the simultaneous experience of feeling like if in the end we give everything back, we give our bodies back to the planet, we give, you know what I'm saying? Like all of our stories, everything that we spend our lives trying to accumulate, we eventually give back. And so from the perspective of the one who has given it all back, who has passed away, who has left the human experience, from that perspective, it would be as if once you've left, it's like as if everything that happened was but a dream, you dig? Because it's not like you can come back and get it back. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not it's a dream, just like a dream happens and then it and then it goes. It comes and it goes. Like passing clouds, waves in the ocean. It's just the natural cycle is that it comes and it goes. And so it's like, okay, what's the value of a dream? Is it really the content inside of the dream? I think that actually those words actually came out in the meditation, something along those lines. What is the value of a dream? Is it the content of the dream? The fact that you were getting to ride around on horses or fly in the air or meet an old friend or be a different kind of person altogether? Is it really the content of the experience? Or is the value that which is enduring, that which is lasting, the very awareness that makes the dream possible in the first place? Don't you know? That the same awareness that knows this moment is the same awareness that knows every dream I've ever had. That same consciousness is there. You could not have dreams or any sort of other experience without that awareness. And so it's like, oh, okay, if that is true inside of the dream state, which all of life becomes once we pass beyond our physical form, then that would quite literally mean that the awareness, that returning to that one state, is the supreme value that we take with us. If you even want to say take with us, I mean, it doesn't go anywhere. You dig what I'm saying? All the other things of experience come into it and then dissipate. But it is that supreme value. I got the sense that, oh, wow, this awareness is that supreme value. That even if you were a trillionaire in a human lifetime, like you couldn't stay that for centuries. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you only, you get the human experience and then you up out of there. And the human experience comes to an end. But the awareness that knew it, the awareness that knew it is that fundamental reality, that basic fabric, the ground of existence, the root of existence, the root of all experience. And what's more, because that awareness doesn't have any boundaries, it doesn't have any borders, we could call it the one state, but it's also the one state. You dig what I'm saying? The same awareness that you knew is the same awareness that I'm knowing. You dig what I'm saying? It's the same. These aren't different awarenesses. It's one awareness. And so when we tap back into that one state, it's like tapping back into that universal wholeness, that universal oneness. And we recognize that that is what gives value to anything that we've been doing, anything that we've been pursuing. But also that for me, I'm like that value it can't be taken or withdrawn from. It can't be. It's not like there's not a market for it. You can't barter or trade it. You can't. And yet it gives. It's the only way we can have experience in the first place. So I started feeling like this awareness was the value. I'm trying to be as clear about this as possible. It just means that at this point in my life, I don't have a whole bunch of like petty goals, but I kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like I still kind of get into a sense of wanting to share, wanting to accomplish, wanting to do, you know what I'm saying? There's still those elements. I'm not as attached to them, but they're still in my psychological experience. Wanting to create content that gets shared. You dig what I'm saying? That's still in my psychological experience. But somehow with the understanding that the value is not in what happens inside of the dream. The value is in the fact that there is an awareness that is capable of producing dreams in the first place. You dig what I'm saying? That is capable of authoring dreams in the first place, authoring experience in the first place. And so it feels like no matter what I do, I take the value with me. And that ties right into our conversation tonight about self-worth. From our conversation with Nikki to the words that I spoke to the teacher after he told me about his diagnosis, and to my own deep experience of what value is in the first place, what worth is in the first place. That the worth is in that enduring faculty. If you could even call it a faculty, I more so call awareness a principle. I get right now the modern science wants to believe that awareness is localized inside of the organism. What I'm saying is to the contrary. I'm saying that the organism is an expression of this base level awareness because it takes awareness to even recognize an organism, to even know or experience an organism, to even be constituted as an organism. You do what I'm saying? And so it's like, just from basic experience, we can see that, oh gosh, for me, I can see that there's no boundary. There's just this oneness. And that is the oneness that makes all other things possible. And regardless of what transpires, what content flows onto the screen of experience, that fundamental fabric is unchanging, unceasing, eternal. And it is available for this experience and the next. And so I want to see if I can lock that down or rather write that down, jot that down in tonight's principle, pattern, and the path. After our laboratory experiment, I like to go to something called the breakthrough board, where we can uncover tonight's principle, discover the patterns that undergird behavior, and discover our path forward. Let's get to that right now. So right now, I've got the breakthrough board with me, and I want to go through this principle, this pattern, this path. I like to teach from principle because if I can understand the principle behind a thing, then I can find my own path forward regardless of whatever else I know. And so tonight we work with this principle. In order to find the principle, though, I have to turn within. I want to take that experience that I got out of the lab and see if I can rescue a principle for the evening that we can use. Mm. And by the way, I see y'all, saying like, yeah, tonight's been an interesting one. Uh, tonight's been an interesting one. Brian George says, "Hello, twins. Great seeing y'all today. Excellent. Okay, and the twins are welcoming Brian George in. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, I missed a whole bunch of comments, bruh. Okay, so wonderful, good sir. Blah, blah, blah. Have you ever been pulled in so many ways? Twins saying, have you ever been pulled in so many ways, but it's all the right ways? I can't explain this one. It's just a feeling unbeknownst to this realm. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I mean, we can't. That happens a lot. That happens a lot. I'm having a moment too. That's why I like the principal pattern path because it helps me kind of get at that feeling, that which is felt, but it's like how do you articulate that intellectually so that it serves someone else? You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm looking for tonight's principle. It's because that there was that moment. Am I aware? I felt my mind getting distracted during the lab experiment tonight. I felt my mind wanting to go to, you know, stop crying on camera. You know what I'm saying? I felt my mind going pulled in all kinds of directions. And so it's like, okay, am I aware that the teaching, what was coming through the lab experiment, the meditation for the evening, spirit kept guiding me back to this question of, am I aware? Okay, when I saw am I aware, I asked myself that question. I saw that that awareness kind of disassociated me from the identity that was clinging to a thought. Or I can kind of lessen the identity of being a host on a show or being live, you know. I could lessen that, and I felt the awareness kind of divest itself of the identity that could clutch onto negative thinking. So every time that question kept coming back, am I aware? And it even kept coming back and being stated during the lab experiment. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's like, hmm, okay, let's try it. Let's rock with this. Okay, I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, hmm, trying to make sure this makes sense. Okay, let me see if I'm gonna see if I can work it like this. The one thing I started noticing tonight was that this greater awareness, see if y'all can see, this greater awareness, it actually has the ability to divest me of this lesser identity. Awareness, when I'm identifying as this awareness, and by identifying, I mean just asking myself, am I aware, and seeing that I can only ever be. That simple recognition seems to have the capacity to divest me of any lesser identity, any identity, even as a person, as a human, as a guy with a name, as a guy on a chair, as a any other identity that isn't this one. Returning back to this question of awareness, it seems to it divests me of any lesser identity. I'm no longer as caught up in the needs of any particular one, any particular self that is anything other than this great universal self. That's where that feeling of, oh wow, this body, this story, this history, it is much more like an organism inside of this greater ocean. Like if you could think about a human being literally going into, like, you jumping into the middle of the Atlantic and swimming all the way to as far as deep as you can go, and then realizing somehow that all of that water, all of the multitude of that entire aquatic world, that was your true body, and the human body that you jumped into the ocean with in the first place was just a mere one component of this larger tapestry. It was just one of the elements that's otherwise operating inside of this ecosystem of you. You dig what I'm saying? Like it's like okay, that's that greater ocean of awareness. And it begins to not erase the lesser identity, not erase the human, but to put the human in its proper context as if it is just an element. It is a part of this play. It is a part of the story, but it is just a part. It is just a part. So there was like this divestment, and then with that comes this deep level of peace because it means that whatever the challenges have been, will be, whatever the cases are for a human, they're one always temporary, and two, when it comes to the great self, they can hardly even be constituted as a problem because they're so ephemeral. They're so here and then not. You dig what I'm saying? That doesn't mean that we can't feel or that I can't feel or experience the human existence. It just means that there's a deeper reservoir of truth to anchor myself in so that I don't get lost in the human experience, in the lesser identity. This is that piece I wish I would have known at 12, 13, 14. You feel me? But tonight, just a simple looking, just a simple seeing on a simple show reveals this great truth. You understand? So tonight's principle is that awareness divests you of any lesser identity. Identifying as awareness, it divests you of any lesser identity. That is our principle for the evening. So as we're looking at this principle, we turn our attention next to the path. I'm sorry, we turn our attention next to the pattern. We want to know the pattern that gets us into trouble in the first place. What is the pattern of behavior that gets us into trouble in the first place? The reason we want to study patterns is because once we can identify a pattern, then we can break that pattern. We can go above that pattern. We can move around that pattern. We can go under that pattern. We can go through that pattern. We can otherwise deal with that pattern. But the first step is identifying the pattern. So what's the pattern tonight? The pattern. Why do we get into this kind of trouble in the first place? What's the pattern? Again, in order to find the pattern, we have to go within and observe. Okay. 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 Yeah. Okay, so here we go. So the pattern that I'm addressing, that I'm seeing tonight, is that there seems to be this karma, this what we could call, let's call that unexamined karma. And that breaks down into two components here. Really, it's just sequentially. But the first deal is that we have these mental habits. We have these mental habits that go unexamined. And really, I should probably do it like this. And these unexamined mental habits produce consequences. That is the pattern. So, in the most obvious basic way would be if you have a unexamined habit of whenever you feel ignored, you begin stacking up moments that in your own mind that confirm to you that you should be ignored. You begin to join in with another person and say that, oh wow, this, yeah, you don't have that value. You don't have that self-worth. This was my issue back when I was a teen, right? It's this unexamined habit of being like, oh, if you're being ignored, it's because you should be. If you're not being paid attention to, it's because you don't need to be paid attention to. You dig what I'm saying? If you have that unexamined mental habit, and a lot of times we don't even know when we are engaging in these mental habits. Why? Because it's unexamined. So when we take this notion of karma, all karma is the consequences that flow from unexamined mental habits. Or you could just say the consequences that flow from our mental habits. If you participate and join in, and you also, upon feeling ignored, justify that you deserve to be ignored, well, the consequence of that is going to be a deeper resistance, a deep sense that, oh boy, there's you're not worth much. You dig what I'm saying? Like that's going to be the consequence. If you think that you should be ignored, then that's going to impact the value that you believe you have and the worth that you believe others should place in you. Those become the consequences, but then those consequences beget other consequences. You're more likely to be uncomfortable with spotlight. You're more likely to be uncomfortable voicing opinion. You're more likely to be uncomfortable believing in big dreams, setting big goals, and believing you can achieve them. You dig what I'm saying? That's just one set of consequences. You could respond in a whole different way. There could be a whole different sequence of consequences, but the point is we can understand the consequences when we come to the mental habits that are generating the consequences. When we understand a person's karma, that's just a simple way of doing it. It doesn't matter if we're talking about individuals, as we're doing tonight, or if we're talking about entire societies, entire civilizations that have unexamined habits that lead to unintended consequences, detrimental consequences. It's the same process. That's why tonight is part two. Last week we covered part one, which is what happens when it's on a civilizational scale. This week we cover in part two, which is what happens when this comes down to the level of the individual. It's the same process. Unexamined habits, unexamined mental, or you could even say psycho-spiritual habits leading to these detrimental consequences. That's the pattern that we're dealing with tonight. That's the pattern. So our principle tonight was that awareness allows us to disengage, to disidentify, disassociate with any lesser identity, that we may know a deeper peace. But the pattern, the reason we get into trouble in the first place, is because those lesser identities produce a kind of karma, produce a kind of unexamined mental habit that lends itself, yields unintended detrimental consequences. That's the pattern that we're getting at. And so, in order to move beyond that pattern, we need to discover the path forward. What is it? Again, we know by checking our experience, by looking within. Mm, okay. Can I do it like this? Okay. Let's see if we can do this. All right. So what am I saying? I'm saying that the path forward tonight is this is an eye. Okay. It's like awareness, the eye of you. You might have heard of like the eye of Heru, or some of these ancient traditions had these different ways of formulating awareness itself, right? And so it's even on it's on the back of the dollar bill. If you look, there's an eye sitting on the top of a pyramid. That was meant to elucidate the importance and presence of awareness, right? So awareness allows us both to examine habits, right? We can now observe habits while remaining as the self. And when I say the self, I mean the self in the way of the Advaita, in the way of the Advaita tradition, how they mean the self. The self just means the ultimate supreme one, the one in which we all are a part, the universal one. You could say the one that follows nature, or the one that is nature. You could also say the one that is God. You dig what I'm saying? The God within. You dig what I'm saying? So that's what this is. That's what they mean when they say the self or the supreme Atman. Okay, cool. So that awareness allows us to both observe habits while we remain the self. So imagine how cool that is. If I can both maintain my level of peace as I observe the mistakes and foibles of the human personality, as I observe the unexamined habits of the this particular human psycho spiritual matrix, I can still remain the peaceful, universal, loving self, which means that I can look and observe these habits without creating new habits on top, without judging myself for having a bad habit. You dig what I'm saying? Without judging myself for ever feeling doubtful about myself. You feel me? So now I'm back in this place where I can both be loving to the supreme reality, to God, to supreme nature, to the supreme Atman, in this position of deep peace, in this position of deep connectedness, of deep and total oneness, and still pay attention to the human experience. Mindful, of course, of the habits that I was otherwise trying to pretend I didn't have. I don't need to pretend when I know that I have peace instead of pain from trying to face my tiny self, from facing my human personality. You dig what I'm saying? From facing my human story and all the events and situations and circumstances and people in it. So, this awareness, it has a dual capacity, both for us to observe what is happening in the here and now and to remain at peace, deeply rooted within the fundamental fabric of existence the entire time, deeply rooted within the fundamental fabric of experience the entire time. That's our path forward tonight. What an evening. What an evening. Folks, what an evening. You know, there's somebody who was kind of missing y'all last week, and I wanted to make sure that he came through on this week. And he said he had something to tell you. I don't know, but I think you do know what time it is. That's right. It's that divine turtle time. Breakthrough Turtle has come through. Breakthrough. I think you try and talk to him. Breakthrough Turtle is here tonight on Divine Turtle Time. Breakthrough Turtle has a special message that he wants to give us. He's saying tonight is actually a better night to give us this special message, and I want to see exactly what he's talking about. Breakthrough Turtle, it's been an interesting one, man. You know what I'm saying? I could feel your support from the other side of the room, man. But what you got for us this week, you know? In order to get the breakthrough, of course, we gotta break him open. Open him up. Okay, okay. Oh, look at that. They got their turtles in the chat. They got their turtles in the chat. Breakthrough. Ugh. All right, let's get him. Okay, so Break the Turtle has this for us. All right, all right, all right. Okay. All right. Looks like he got a lot for us. Here we go. He says, "What an evening." What up, B? Twin saying, "What up, B?" They got the turtles in the chat. Absolutely. Excellent. All right, so here we go. I think I saw Tanya in the room earlier. Hey, Tanya, what's happening? Okay, we did see you come in. She thought she was going to be quiet, but we got her. All right, so Break the Turtle is saying science is not only compatible with spirituality, it is a profound source of spirituality. When we recognize our place in an immensity of light years and in the passage of ages, when we grasp the intricacy, beauty, and subtlety of life, then that soaring feeling, that sense of elation and humility combined is surely spiritual. So are our emotions in the presence of great art or music or literature or acts of exemplary selfless courage, such as those of Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr. The notion that science and spirituality are somehow mutually exclusive does a disservice to both. Carl Sagan. Hmm. Okay, Break the Turtle. Let's get one more. Science is not only compatible with spirituality, it is a profound source of spirituality. When we recognize our place in an immensity of light years and in the passage of ages, when we grasp the intricacy, beauty, and subtlety of life, then that soaring feeling, that sense of elation and humility combined, is surely spiritual. Yeah, breakthrough turtle. So are our emotions in the presence of great art or music or literature or a teacher or acts of exemplary, selfless courage. I think I think this is kind of what the tears were about tonight. That in this reflection moment over the life of a man, the man that I call the teacher, there was this understanding of all this time, all this training, which itself was laced with an intricacy, a beauty, a soaring feeling that was both a sense of elation and a humility. Just like just like I saw tonight with this expanded awareness. It's like it is both a source of deep peace, but also it makes the human story feel so much a part of a larger tapestry rather than this maniacal focus, rather than this thing that is suffocating. And we can engage in this selfless courage when we're willing to give up the lesser self. And I think, my time with the teacher is nothing short of just a great work of art. Like where the conversations, it's not like music, but where the conversations are kind of like music, kind of like the best songs, kind of like the best literature that you've ever experienced. Where just these simple pointings become these great lookings, these great discoveries. And in fact, even if you're a talented musician, it would take you your entire life to create a song as beautiful as these discoveries. You understand? I don't think it can be done, but you can look to approximate it. When we recognize our place in an immensity of light years and in the passage of ages, yes, that identification as awareness, it allows us to step outside of time. The human experience becomes just one component in this larger, I keep calling it a tapestry, but in this large, it becomes one node in this larger portrait, one Bendada, okay, in this larger portrait. And there is that soaring feeling, that sense of elation and humility. Yes, where it's like this relationship with the teacher has been a great work of art, displaying both that intersection of science and spirituality. And it's powerful, very good turtle. I appreciate this one. Because in the end, what I'm left with is that sense of that soaring feeling but that soaring feeling is also a rooted feeling. It's also the thing that I feel is that very value that we take into this life and the next, regardless of a dream that the content of experience, a dream is just like a content of our experience, regardless of who comes into our lives, who leaves, who goes, who stays, you know what I'm saying? All of it is constantly in flux. It's always constantly coming and going. And that rooted presence, that grounded awareness is what makes the entire show possible. And so it's what makes the entire show valuable because that piece is the part that stays no matter whatever else happens. And more to the point, it's like that awareness is what the entire experience was made out of. So that we call it a coming and going, but really it's just more like a changing of form. But that common substance, that essential magic, that fundamental essence, that remains. To take on a new form or do something else. Yeah. Appreciate you, B. Appreciate you. Folks, what an evening. Part one, part two. What happens when I'm aware of awareness itself? I see that my identity gets divested of any lesser frequency, and yet I retain this capacity to both examine my own personal mental habits and remain deeply at peace as a result, such that I do not create any additional negative mental habits. And reflecting tonight on this, first person to point me to this, to show me this teaching. Hmm. To you, I say thank you. And may you always abide in this love, this universal, one, fundamental awareness. As for our evening tonight, folks, I just want to say that if fear is our only enemy, then we bring heaven to earth when we transform our minds. I'm Dr. Shawn, and we were not sent to impress our people. We were sent to transform our people into a light for the world. For God's universe opens to all who believe in breakthrough. Good night, everybody.